Hi, so we've got day 2 of our 20-day Exodus read-through. Sorry about that. Today we're going to read Exodus 3 and 4, which I've entitled rather playfully, Fiery Foliage. So I'm reading for the NRSV, and I hope you enjoy it. Exodus 3. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight, and see why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush. Moses, Moses, he said. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place in which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of the people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them from Egypt, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how the Egyptians oppressed them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He said, I will be with you. And this shall be the sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have brought these people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain. But Moses said to God, If I come to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your ancestors has sent me, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, Thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and my title for all the generations. Go and assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have given heed to you and to what has been done to you in Egypt. I declare that I will bring you up out of the misery of Egypt, to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. They will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us now go, a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. I know, however, that the king of Egypt will not let you go, unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will perform in it. After that, he will let you go. I will bring this people into such favour with the Egyptians that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. Each woman shall ask her neighbour, and any woman living in the neighbour's house for jewellery of silver and of gold and clothing, and you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, and so shall plunder the Egyptians. Exodus 4. Then Moses answered, but suppose they do not believe me or listen to me, but say, the Lord did not appear to you. The Lord said to him, what is in your hand? He said, a staff. And he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw the staff on the ground, and it became a snake. And Moses drew back from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, reach out your hand and seize it by the tail. So he reached out his hand and grasped it, and it became a staff in his hand. So that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. Again, the Lord said to him, put your hand inside your cloak. He put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous and white as snow. Then God said, put your hand back inside your cloak. So he put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his body. If they will not believe you, or heed the first sign, they may believe the second sign. If they will not believe even these two signs, or heed you, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. And the water that you shall take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. But Moses said to the Lord, oh my Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor even now, that you have spoken to your servant. But I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. The Lord said to him, who gives speech to mortals? Who makes them mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to speak. But he said, oh Lord, please send someone else. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, what of your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak fluently. Even now he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, his heart will be glad. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and he will teach you what you shall do. He indeed shall speak for you to the people. He shall serve as a mouth for you, and you shall serve as God for him. Take in your hand this staff, with which you will perform the signs. Moses went back to his father-in-law Jethro and said to him, please let me go back to my kindred in Egypt and see whether or not they are still living. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. The Lord said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all those who were seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses carried the staff of God in his hands. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders that I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart, so that he will not let your people go. Then you shall say to the Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. I said to you, let my son go, that he may worship me. But you refused to let him go. Now I will kill your firstborn son. On the way, at a place where they spent the night, the Lord met him and tried to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, truly you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. It was then, she said, a bridegroom of blood by circumcision. The Lord said to Aaron, "Go into the wilderness to meet Moses." So he went and he met him in the wilderness at the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord which he had sent him, and all the signs with which he had charged him. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the Israelites. Aaron spoke all of the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses, and performed the signs in the sight of the people. The people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had given heed to the Israelites, and that they had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. So what can we say about those two chapters that we've just heard? The fiery foliage, the burning bush. We all remember it. It's very picturesque. In some sense, the way that it's described makes me wonder if bushes were frequently burning in the wilderness. I mean, maybe they were. Maybe there is a time, obviously, for fires, and if it was very dry. But there's something about this bush that's different, isn't it? That it's the not being consumed. And Moses has a really good look and then goes, I think I need to look a bit more at this bush. So again, it's interesting that what Moses is seeing, because we talked about how Moses looked around to see if anyone was watching him, and now he's looking around at this bush and he goes back for a second look. It's all eyes, all sight, which is interesting to note. But possibly the most interesting part of this is how reluctant Moses is to go. He does not want, and he pretty much profusely argues with God not to send him. Don't send me. I'm not good enough. I'm not well. I can't speak well enough. No one's going to listen to me. They won't know who I am. And God has to overcome all these things. Maybe ask yourself the question, what if it hadn't been a staff in his hand? Would God have used whatever else it was? If it was a cup, if it was, I don't know, what else he might have carried with him, if he was holding his coat. You know, was it just that God was going, whatever you have, I will make use of it? And is that then saying to us, like, whatever we have, God's going to make use of it? Just what we have, whatever's lying around, God can use that. Because God can use us. Because it's actually irrelevant who we are and what gifts we do or do not have. God's going to use us as we are, with the gifts and the things that are in our hands. And then there's that really weird bit where God attacks Moses. Interesting though, and I think the point of the story is Moses obviously hasn't circumcised his son. Why? Has he left Egypt and actually in some ways turned his back completely on Israel? You know, is he just, well, actually, I'm never going to go back. I'm not having anything to do with that he's separated himself, because the circumcision is the mark of the covenant. It's the mark that there are people of God and there are people of Israel. So maybe Moses really had no intention of ever being anything to do with them at all. Maybe that's what this is saying. And I can imagine that making God a little bit displeased. But anyway, there's lots of interesting things to think about. What did you find interesting? What stuck out for you? You've probably heard this story before. Was there anything that you'd forgotten or missed? Love to hear your thoughts.